I hope you get the chance to hear the birds sing in the background, because it's truly beautiful and healing. And speaking of healing, we need to talk about Chiron. We need to talk about the work that Chiron has been doing for all of us throughout the past 7 years. It hasn't been easy. It's been a tough ride for many of us. It's been an insightful and life-transforming period of time. And it has been, on the surface, looking like a lot of things were being ripped apart, falling apart, changing us dramatically, both on a collective level and on a personal level. And Chiron in Aries has been playing a big role in that giant shift in humanity and coming closer to expressing ourselves authentically as souls on this earth. And I want to introduce you a little bit to Chiron and what he has been doing for us, because Chiron will this summer move temporarily into Taurus and give us sort of a preview to what this next chapter in life will feel like. But then he will retrograde back into Aries for final examination, a final test to see if we have learned and integrated the big lessons of the past 8 years, where Chiron has deeply transformed us and deeply touched down upon the deepest, darkest wounds we could ever come in contact with regarding how we perceive ourselves, how we define ourselves, how we see ourselves. Chiron is the great archetype of the wounded healer. He is the archetype of where we can become the master healers for ourselves, for other people, once we have understood the levels of hurt we've been through ourselves in those areas. Chiron is needed as an archetype on this earth because he's the one coming in and confronting us with the collective shadows, the shadows within ourselves, everything that isn't in alignment with why we came here, what we're supposed to do in this lifetime and how we do it. And I think more than ever now, Chiron is an archetype that we really need to tend to and understand, because as we are healing ourselves, we're healing this earth as well, but there's a lot of work still to be done. And I want to remind all of you that every time that it seems dark and hopeless, you need to know that it takes bravery, and true mastery only comes through looking at your own wounds first, and then from an integrated place, moving forward into the world and spreading that frequency, spreading that energy towards humanity. It all really truly starts from within, because when we can look at those things, we can stand strongly in ourselves, and the more we clean the wounds out, the less we will be prone to be manipulated by fear. So this is one of those moments in time where I would definitely say that there has been a giant shift in consciousness. One of the things I find extremely interesting is that Chiron moved into Aries in 2018, and then later on that year he retrograded back into Pisces, and then in 2019 February he moved back into Aries and stayed there up until now. And if you think back to 2018, I'm sure that you will think about a world that looked quite different from what it does now. We all know what was happening a few years later as well, which has been a giant both wound and exposure of the shadows of humanity in that period of time. And the interesting thing is that depending on the sign which Aries operate in, he will come in and make us look at different areas. And the reason why him being in the sign of Aries has been so significant is because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. Aries has to do with our identity, how we view ourselves, how we express ourselves, how we move in this world. It's very physical, it's very primal, It's very connected to our instincts. And it's connected to the core definition of who we are and how we move in this world. So when Chiron has been working through Aries for this long period of time, there's been questions about who are we as a humanity. And I think a lot in this period of time, looking back, for many of you, you will see that extremes like never before has been exposed on the world stage and will continue to do so once we see the last lessons of Aries and Chiron. But also on a personal level, it has been quite an eventful journey and ride for all of us. It has been moving us through where we feel lost, where we feel that we don't have any power, where we feel like our own shadows take over and navigate who we are and where we are going in this world. I want to talk to you personally. If you are someone who has been going through immense changes since 2018, who might have felt that no matter what you did, there was just another obstacle, another shadow to be revealed, another test, another trial, then getting back on your feet, and then it all was falling down again. I want to talk to you if you're someone who many times through this period have felt a level of despair, depression, thinking that you couldn't do it anymore. Because I want to say to you, you're still here, you're still listening to this. And this might be the greatest achievement that you will reap the fruits from in this lifetime on the other side. And one of the wonderful things about astrology is that it really does show us the path. It shows us the ebbs and the flows of life. It shows us where we cannot really fight the fact that life is life, that we chose to reincarnate at a specific time, to take on a specific assignment, to be part of a collective that is healing and changing this world. Because let's just face it, we cannot bypass all the darkness, cannot overlook the fact that if I personally was an alien, I would not like to land on Earth because I would think, what are they doing? You know, I always say that. Humanity stands at a big reckoning point, and I believe that there are big chains of timelines, and that you, because you are the sensitive soul that you are going through all of this, you have taken upon this journey close to yourself, because you know that you're part of this healing frequency that will change the way that we think, change the way that we be, change the way that we engage with one another. But we are in this physical human experience where the ruler of time, Saturn, is very real. Even though time in many ways can be seen as an illusion, we still have a certain amount of time in this physical human body, and it's constantly changing. And Chiron wants us to not stay stagnant, to not stay the same. He's going in and giving us an opportunity to go to the deepest corner of ourselves and look at, why am I acting like that? Why am I restricting myself? Where am I being manipulated by programming and fear? And some of the questions I will ask you, being here, being brave enough to be here, is to really sit with Chiron in Aries and all of these 8 years of lessons and ask yourself, who am I truly beneath all of this conditioning? If I look back to everything that I believed in from 2018 up to now, what belief systems have I let go of? What I have learned about myself? How did I change? Can I tune into the perceptions that I had in the past version of myself and say, never again. I'm never gonna do that again. Also, try to look at what identity had you built based on pain. because that will be another big subject of how Chiron in Aries has worked through your conditioning of your perceived personality. A lot of identity, a lot of personality is based on the pain that we go through when we are being conditioned into this world. The moment we take our first breath, there's a conditioning. And what Chiron in Aries have taught us, if we paid attention to where it was hurting us deeply the past years, Chiron taught us this is an illusion too. You have been operating from a belief system that wasn't even yours. You have been operating from a standpoint that you didn't make. And you have been manipulated by the fear in your frequency that made you prone to believe that this is all there is. My life is not bigger than this. I should not listen to the calling of my heart, the calling of my soul. I cannot do that. And the thing about life is that it represents to us situations and people that replay those belief systems that we are already familiar with. So you are most likely someone who would have repeated encounters of deep pain, encounters of people or places or situations for the past years that just seems to be endlessly confirming everything you thought you were when you were living under the conditioned mind and under fear. And I want to tell you, this is part of the human existence. This is part of the human experience. This is part of why we come here. And if we are aware enough, part of what we are lucky enough to change. Because if we look at the collective as a whole, we will see that all these belief systems, all these fears, all these limitations are built from people and systems that can only operate from pain and fear programming. So the more of us who become aware of where we are prone to manipulation and where we truly changes that frequency, we will step by step change the reality in which we live in. We will change the connection we have with nature, with Mother Earth, change the way we treat our own bodies, the way we treat the earth that we walk on, and the thoughts that we tell ourselves. And Chiron in Aries are truly a transformative placement. And back to when Chiron the last time was in Aries, in the 60s, late 60s, isn't it interesting how there seems to be a parallel to that period of time, just in an upgraded version, where we really start to wake up to the identity patterns that we take upon ourselves, and as a collective as well, regarding many subjects, regarding how we define ourselves, how we define gender, how we define thoughts and beliefs and conditioning and rights and equality and humanness. There is something very special to being alive in a time where we have had to go through a Chiron in Aries period. And another thing that I would really like for you to integrate and ask yourself as we move through first a period of time where we get the flavor of what it feels like to have Aries, not have Aries in Chiron anymore, but then moving back into the final lessons. And that would be the question about what instincts are you supposed to trust? What instincts are you supposed to trust based on the lessons that you have had? Also, what version is trying to emerge from you? Because there's a version of you that has been molded and trying to really come to its final fruition before you fully are embodying that version of yourself. And that will be the great last test of Chiron. Have you gathered enough data in order for you to feel confident and to trust that you are a new person now? And one of my favorite examples is that there are two choices. It's like a crossroad when we talk about the transformation that we can go through and stay in and live from versus try to self-sabotage. So one of the examples were, when people have been obese their entire life, because this is a very physical example that we can understand looking at it. When people have been obese their entire life and then maybe go on a program and suddenly lose all of that weight, there's often two things that happen. One thing is that perhaps they have had all the tools to maintain the weight loss and stay on that track. But they experience that every time they go out and buy new clothing, they keep buying the wrong size because they just cannot comprehend yet what they look like now. But slowly, over time, they get used to being that size, getting used to learning how to dress in that new body and becoming confident in that new body. That is sort of like the chance that you have right now to integrate that new version of yourself, saying, I might not do it perfectly, I might go out and buy the wrong dress size still because I haven't seen who I've become, but I'm aware of it and I'm integrating it and I'm embodying it. The other part of the crossroad is when you start to self-sabotage that new image that you've become. You gain all the weight and maybe even more, so that you could come back to what feels familiar to you. And Chiron in Aries, it's such a master test. Did we truly learn the lesson? And are we brave enough? Are we brave enough to say, I am worthy and embodying this new personality that I have fought so hard to become? It's like you have been like this sword in fire, and you've been going through fire after fire after fire after fire after fire. But you are now a very strong sword and you can cut through it all. Do you trust that? Do you trust that your perception is now as sharp as a knife? Do you trust that you can follow your instincts and that you will know what's right for you? Can you trust the lessons and not open that old door again? And can you allow the doubt to be there without acting on it? Because from this summer to approximately the spring next year, around mid-April, we will see the master test of Chiron. And you will be asked to step up. And I'm really speaking this with much love. And I'm speaking this slowly because I'm talking to you who have been through so much pain and suffering and emerging and changing. And you're still standing on your 2 feet. That is bravery. I want you, whoever you are watching this video, knowing that you are a beautiful, courageous soul. And you have conquered so much. You're still standing here, you're still listening to these lessons, you're still searching knowledge for yourself. It's extremely important. And you got this. You are able to fully live from that new version of yourself that you can now see has emerged after all this time of transformation, after all this work, after all this strengthening of your soul. And these are the greatest lessons of Chiron, because Chiron, as the wounded healer that he is, also become the master of healing in that specific area that he survived. And I want you to know that. I want you to not doubt the lessons that you have integrated. but I also want you to really be specifically aware of the fact that you are supposed to embody the lessons, not to analyze them anymore. Because there's a part of all of this analysis and all this knowledge that we have in this world that is overdoing everything to sort of like hide away what truly needs to be done, which is to walk in the conviction of who you are, truly, authentically. And it's everything, with Chiron, it's everything from who you perceive yourself to be, your preferences, what you like to do, the network that you have, the people that you engage with, how you show up in the world, the kind of work that you are connected to, what you like to do. All of these personal preferences that build the foundation for other things in your personality and your life. Because how can you attract the right things if you are operating from a version of you that is not your true self? Well, those were the questions that Chiron took you through and separated you from everything that was an illusion, everything that you have learned to be, but that was hurting your soul and your heart. So can you be courageous enough? And to integrate what Chiron and Aries have taught you, I have some questions that you can ask yourself, that you can reflect on. So one of the questions that are the bigger one is that, who are you beneath conditioning? What identity did you build on pain? What instincts are you supposed to trust now? And what version of you is trying to emerge? Those would be 4 very vital questions to ask yourself. Because as Chiron really moves into the last master test, you're ready for it. And you're ready for the change. And I want to emphasize how important it is at this moment in time to embody what you have learned versus staying in analysis around what you learned. That's extremely important. And finally, and maybe most importantly, what future would honor everything that I have survived and everything that I have now become? So those are questions for you to sit with, from me to you, to really integrate this period of time and take the final master test of Chiron moving through Aries in the last part of this year and in the spring of 2027. So I hope that this resonated with you. Leave some comments below. Tell me about the journey you've been on. When you do that, you also allow other people to see that they are not alone and that it's quite empowering to take these astrological lessons and integrate them into your being.